Chosen one, before you click away, answer me this. Have you ever felt like your life was being observed? Even in the seasons when nobody called, nobody checked in, nobody seemed to care, not watched by people, not tracked by cameras, but known, followed, documented, like something ancient and invisible had pulled up a chair to the front row of your life and hadn't moved since the day you were born. Stay with me, because what I'm about to say in the next 60 minutes will explain everything. The crying you did alone in that kitchen, when the kids were grown and the house went quiet, and nobody thought to ask how you were doing. The 3 a.m., wide awake staring at the ceiling, holding a prayer in your chest that felt too heavy for words. The Sunday morning you sat in a pew surrounded by 200 people and felt completely alone in your spirit. The years after the funeral, the silence after the divorce, the unanswered prayers that still sting like fresh wounds even though you've forgiven God 100 times over. You thought nobody saw any of that. You were wrong. Many eyes have been on you. I'm not going to tell you whose eyes not yet, because if I told you right now you wouldn't believe me. The revelation has to be earned. The truth has to be built, layer by layer, the way God builds everything worth keeping. But I will tell you this. Your life has been treated like a case file in the courts of eternity. Evidence collected, prayers recorded, silent endurance witnessed. Every room you walked into, every atmosphere that shifted when you arrived, every person who couldn't explain why they felt something in your presence that they had never felt before. All of it noted. You weren't imagining it. You were never invisible. You were being observed. Before this message ends, I'm going to show you the 4 kinds of eyes that have been watching you, and the last one will finally explain your whole life. If you've ever felt invisible to people but deeply seen somewhere in your spirit, type right now, God has seen me. Let heaven see you respond before we go any deeper, because what you're about to discover will answer why the watching has intensified in your later years, why this season feels different, why something in you already knows this message is not an accident. The watchers are about to be revealed, and you will never see your life the same way again. Let me take a breath with you right now, because everything I said in that opening, the watching, the observing, the case file with your name on it, I know it stirred something in your chest that felt equal parts relief and fear. I know some of you are sitting there thinking, if someone really has been watching all these years, what did they see? Let me answer that right now. The first eyes on your life were not hostile. They were not sent to judge you. They were not counting your failures or cataloging your mistakes. These eyes have been on you since the first morning you chose to keep going when quitting would have been so much easier. The first eyes watching you belonged to heaven itself. And I need you to really hear that, not as a religious phrase, not as something you nod at in church and forget by Tuesday. I mean it as the most personal, most specific, most intimate truth you have ever been handed. Think about Hagar, cast out into the wilderness, no water, no hope, no one coming to rescue her. She sat down in the desert and turned her face away from her dying child because she could not bear to watch. She was invisible to the world, forgotten by the people who were supposed to protect her. And then Genesis 16:13, she looked up and whispered something that has echoed across 4,000 years of human pain. You are the God who sees me. Not the God who fixed everything immediately, not the God who punished those who wronged her, the God who sees. That was enough to change everything. That is the first set of eyes on your life, beloved. The God who sees. Think about Nathanael sitting under a fig tree before Jesus ever called him. He had no idea anyone was watching. He was just a man alone with his thoughts, hidden in the shade, unknown and unremarkable. And when Jesus found him, he didn't say, I read about you, or someone told me about you. He said, John 1:48, I saw you under the fig tree, before you were called, before you were chosen, before you even knew you were being considered. He saw you. That means heaven saw you in all the places you thought you were hidden. Heaven saw you in that kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, crying quietly so the grandchildren asleep down the hall wouldn't hear. Heaven saw the years you showed up to church with a smile plastered across a broken heart because you didn't want to burden anybody. Heaven saw the forgiveness you extended to people who never apologized, who never even acknowledged what they did to you, and you gave it anyway, alone, on your knees, with nobody watching and nobody thanking you. The Bible says in Psalm 56:8, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Not some of them, all of them. Every single tear, bottled, recorded, kept. You know what that means? It means there is a heavenly archive with your name on it. And inside that archive is not a list of everything you did wrong. It is a testimony of everything you endured right. Every time you did the right thing, with no reward. Every time you chose dignity over bitterness. Every time you carried grief with grace, when the whole world would have understood if you collapsed. That is what heaven has been recording. That is what is in your file. And here is where I need to stop and ask you something that might cut you deep. How many of those years did you spend believing that, because no one applauded, no one noticed? How many seasons did you interpret God's silence as God's absence? How many mornings did you drag yourself out of bed thinking none of this matters, nobody sees, it's all disappearing into nothing? That is the lie the enemy has been telling you for decades, and it is time to burn it to the ground. Silence is not absence. God was not distracted. Heaven was not looking the other way. There is a difference between a room that is empty and a room where the light is still burning, and beloved, that light has been burning in your unseen room every single year. Like a courtroom clerk who enters every piece of evidence with careful precision, heaven has been documenting every act of faithfulness you performed in private, every sacrifice, every surrender, every prayer whispered in the dark. The years you thought were wasted were actually documented in heaven. Say that out loud right now. Say it out loud wherever you are sitting. Nothing was wasted. Not the decade of thankless caregiving. Not the prayers that seemed to hit the ceiling. Not the grief you carried longer than anyone knew. Not one single year. Not one single morning. Not one single tear. All of it witnessed. All of it recorded. All of it being prepared as evidence for your vindication. Because heaven does not watch the faithful in order to punish them. Heaven watches the faithful in order to commission them. This was never surveillance. This was preparation. This was God building a case not against you but for you. And that case is almost complete. But I need you to understand something before we go further. Because heaven is not the only witness that has had eyes on your life. There were other eyes watching you too, and not all of them were kind. Let me ask you something that's going to stop you cold. Have you ever walked into a room, a church fellowship hall, a family gathering, your neighbor's kitchen, and the conversation just stopped? Not because you said anything wrong, not because you dressed strange, but because something in the atmosphere shifted the moment you crossed that threshold, like a barometric pressure drop before a storm, and nobody could explain it, including you. That wasn't coincidence. That was your presence announcing itself before your mouth ever opened. Here's what's been happening your entire life that nobody sat you down and told you. You are not a normal person living in a normal body carrying normal spiritual weight. You are a tuning fork, and when a tuning fork vibrates, every instrument in the room starts responding whether they want to or not. Think about the people who've been drawn to you over the decades. Strangers in checkout lines at the grocery store on Flatbush, who suddenly started confessing things to you they'd never told their own families. Children who crawled into your lap without hesitation while avoiding every other adult in the room. Broken people who called you at 11 o'clock at night, not because you had all the answers, but because something in your voice made the darkness feel less absolute. That wasn't personality, that was anointing. And then think about the other side of it. The people who became inexplicably cold toward you. The coworker who avoided you at lunch for no reason you could name. The family member who bristled when you walked into Thanksgiving dinner, though you hadn't said a word. The church member who smiled to your face but kept their distance like you were carrying something they didn't want to catch. They weren't wrong. You were carrying something, They just misidentified what it was. Your presence has always had spiritual weight. And spiritual weight, real spiritual weight, produces three distinct reactions in the people around you. Three human responses that have been following you your whole life. And once you understand them, 70 years of confusion will collapse into perfect clarity. The first reaction is awe. There are people who encountered you maybe briefly, maybe decades ago, who never forgot you. They couldn't tell you why. They'd say things like, "There's something about them I can't put my finger on." They met you once at a prayer meeting in 1987 and still think about you. They heard you speak one sentence, not a sermon, just a sentence, and something cracked open in their chest. That's not your charm. That's the weight of God's mark on your life, radiating through your ordinary words and ordinary movements. Proverbs 16:15 says, "When a king's face brightens, it means life." You've been brightening rooms without ever sitting on a throne. The second reaction is envy. And this one is going to sting because you felt it without understanding what it was. Someone looked at you, at your peace, your steadiness, your quiet authority, and instead of being inspired, they were disturbed. They'd say to themselves, "Why do they still carry that light after everything they've been through? It doesn't make sense. They've lost more than I have. They've suffered more than I have. Why are they still standing?" That question was burning a hole in their spirit. And instead of running toward God to find the answer, they turned that confusion into distance, into cold shoulders, into whispered words behind your back. Beloved, people don't envy the defeated. They envy the anointed. Joseph's brothers didn't throw him in that pit because he was weak. Genesis 37:11 says they were jealous because his dreams revealed a dimension of favor they couldn't access and couldn't replicate. Your resilience has been doing that to people your entire life. You're still burning fire at 75, at 80, at 85. It quietly condemns the people who gave up at 50, and they felt it. Even when you never said a word. The third reaction is the one that will shake you. It's recognition. Not admiration, not curiosity, recognition. The kind that comes from somewhere beneath the conscious mind. These are the people who looked at you and sensed in their spirit before their brain could process it. This person is marked, not religious, not just faithful, marked, chosen for something their natural eyes couldn't see. A nurse who watched you face a cancer diagnosis with impossible peace. A grandchild who felt safer in your presence than anywhere on earth and couldn't explain why. A stranger on the subway who glanced at you and looked away quickly, not from rudeness, but because something in your face made them feel exposed. John 1:5 says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Not cannot, has not. Past tense. Meaning, your light has already been winning battles you never even knew were being fought. And here is what is going to hit you hardest. In your later years, you are not carrying youthful energy anymore. You gave that up. What you are carrying now is something the young cannot manufacture. It is tested gravity. It is the weight of a faith that has survived funerals, betrayals, diagnoses, financial collapse, and unanswered prayers, and kept walking anyway. That is not ordinary. That is an old oak tree that has survived 40 years of storms, and whose roots now go so deep that the wind doesn't even make it tremble. You were not ignored, beloved. You were unforgettable to every person in your life who had even a trace of spiritual sensitivity. If people have reacted to you in ways they could never explain, right now, there's something on my life. Let heaven see you claim what was placed on you before you were born. But here is where this message has to turn. Because recognition from strangers is one thing. Validation from people who barely knew you, that is beautiful. But it doesn't cut deep. What cuts deep is when the eyes that have been watching you, studying you, reacting to your light, belong to people you loved. Now I need you to slow down with me, because this part is going to hurt. Not the kind of hurt that comes from a stranger, not the sharp sting of someone you never trusted. I'm talking about the deep, quiet, gut-level ache that only comes when the wound was made by a familiar hand. someone who knew your name, someone who sat at your table, someone who used to call you on Sunday afternoons just to check in, someone who loved you and still couldn't stop watching you with a complicated, broken heart. Let me ask you something nobody else has dared to ask you. Was there ever a person in your life, a sibling, an adult child, a close friend, a church member you served beside for 20 years who suddenly grew cold, who started keeping their distance right around the time God started blessing you, who seemed to know just a little too much about your struggles and you couldn't figure out how? Don't rush past that question. Sit in it, because what I'm about to tell you will reframe every relationship that confused you, every friendship that quietly dissolved, every family dinner that ended in silence and drove home in tension. Some people didn't watch you from the outside. They were watching you from the inside, up close, with love in one hand and resentment in the other. And that is the most complicated wound a human being can carry. Here is the truth they never teach you in church. A person can genuinely love you and still resent what you represent. They can pray for you on Sunday morning and whisper about you by Sunday night. They can hug you at the door and pull up your image on their phone to show someone else the moment they get to their car. Love and envy are not opposites. They can live in the same chest, breathe the same air, speak the same name, yours, with two completely different intentions in the same sentence. David knew this. He didn't learn it from an enemy. He learned it from a friend. In Psalm 55, he wrote something so raw, it barely sounds like scripture. He said, "It was not an enemy that reproached me then, I could have borne it. But it was thou, a man mine equal, my guide, and mine acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together, and walked unto the house of God in company." Read that again. This was not a stranger. This was the person David walked to the house of God with, side by side, week after week. That person turned, and David said, if it had been an enemy, I could have handled it. But it wasn't, and neither was yours. Think about Joseph. His brothers didn't hate him because he was wicked. Genesis 37 tells us plainly they were jealous, because his dreams were bigger, because his father's love rested on him in a way they couldn't replicate. So they threw him in a pit, sold him for 20 pieces of silver, carried his coat back to their father, soaked in goat's blood, and watched the old man weep for a son who wasn't even dead. They did all of that, and they still called themselves family. And then there was Judas. 3 years walking with Jesus, 3 years watching miracles, 3 years eating at the same table, sharing the same bread, hearing the same sermons that shook nations. And Jesus, knowing everything, called him friend, not enemy, not traitor, friend. But Luke 22 records the moment Judas walked up in the garden and pressed his lips to Jesus' cheek. The ancient symbol of love, used as a weapon. The knife always comes from a hand you once held. I need you to hear that, not as poetry, as your story. Maybe it was your adult child who took everything you confided in them about your marriage and carried it to every sibling in the family. Maybe it was the woman who sat next to you in the choir for 15 years and then stood at the front of the church and told your story without using your name, but everyone knew it was you. Maybe it was the friend who knew about your weakest season, your lowest moment, the year you almost didn't survive, and instead of protecting that, they handed it to someone who had no business holding it, and you never understood why. Let me tell you why. Your growth disturbed something in them. Not your arrogance, not your pride, your growth, your quiet faithfulness, your refusal to quit. The way God kept showing up in your life even when you stopped expecting him to. The way you came back from things that were supposed to finish you. That disturbed something they couldn't name, couldn't pray away, couldn't resolve in their own hearts. Your peace became a rebuke to their chaos. Your endurance became a mirror they didn't want to look into. And instead of asking God to build that in them, they tried to dismantle it in you. This is what the betrayal was really about. It was never about your failures. It was about your light. The knife came from a familiar hand because your light exposed something in them that they weren't ready to face. And beloved, that is not your shame to carry. If a face came to your mind during these words, and I know one did, don't type their name. Type this instead. I release the wound, but I keep the wisdom, because here is where everything turns. You've been thinking their exposure of you was the end of your story. But what if their exposure of you was actually God's exposure of them? What if every conversation where your name was whispered, every image that was shared, every half-truth that was passed from hand to hand, what if heaven was watching all of it, recording it, building a case not against you, but for you? Stay with me. Because what God does with the watching eyes of broken people is something that will change how you walk into every room for the rest of your life. Now I need you to lean in close, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change the way you see every painful season you have ever lived through. You felt exposed. You felt betrayed. You felt like the people you trusted most took your story into rooms you were never invited into and left pieces of you scattered across conversations you were never supposed to hear about. And somewhere in the middle of all that, you asked God the hardest question a faithful person can ask. Why did you let this happen to me? Here is your answer. God did not author betrayal. But he can use exposure like a surgeon uses a scalpel, with precision, with purpose, and without apology. Think about a courtroom. When a case goes to trial, both sides get to speak. Witnesses are called. Testimony is given. Evidence is examined under the harshest light possible. And the courtroom doesn't exist to destroy the defendant. It exists to reveal the truth. Your life, chosen one, has been on trial. And the testimony being spoken about you in those rooms, you never entered it, was not just gossip, it was cross-examination. And what got cross-examined was not you. It was the motives of everyone who claimed to be in your corner. God permitted the conversation so the fingerprints would finally show up on the evidence. Let me say that slower. He permitted them to talk. He permitted them to share your image, whisper your name, analyze your life. Not to destroy you, but to reveal themselves. Because you cannot see who someone truly is until pressure makes them act. And the pressure of your anointing, your growth, your quiet resilience, that pressure squeezed people. And what came out of them told you everything God had been trying to show you for years. That family member who smiled at Christmas and then picked apart your life in February, the exposure revealed them. That church friend who prayed with you on Sunday and undermined you by Wednesday, the exposure revealed them. That person who said they loved you but only showed up when you were small enough not to threaten them, the exposure revealed them. They did not leave because you failed. They left because you grew. And your growth became a floodlight in a dark warehouse, and suddenly everything hiding in the corners had nowhere left to stand. Romans 8:28 is not a bumper sticker. It is a verdict. And we know that all things work together for good, to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. All things, not the comfortable things, not the things that made sense at the time. All things, including the betrayal, including the whispers, including the seasons when you felt so misunderstood you questioned your own mind. God was working it together. Every season of being misread by people who should have known better was breaking something in you that needed to break the addiction to their approval. Because, beloved, you cannot step into your full authority while you are still managing other people's opinions of you. People-pleasing is a chain disguised as kindness. And sometimes God lets you be talked about, lets you be misunderstood, lets you be passed over because he is cutting that chain, one link at a time. And here is what will give you your life back. You do not need revenge. You never needed it. What you needed, what God has been giving you through every painful exposure, is revelation. Clarity about who was truly assigned to your life, and who was only drawn to the version of you that was still too broken to challenge them. Some people only loved you when you were smaller, when you were easier to manage, when your faith was quieter and your prayers were less dangerous. The moment you started becoming who God always intended, they started pulling away. That was not rejection, that was divine separation. God was clarifying the room. He was removing false access before he released true covenant. He was filtering the tourists before he positioned the pilgrims. He was exposing the counterfeit before he released the genuine. And yes, it hurt like nothing you have ever felt, because the knife always cuts deepest when it comes from a hand you once held. David knew it. Psalm 55:12. It was not an enemy that reproached me, then I could have borne it. But David survived it, and so did you, and so will you. Say this out loud right now, wherever you are sitting. Say it like you mean it, because you do. God used it to uncover what I needed to see. That is not weakness. That is wisdom forged in fire. And what they meant to use against you became the very thing that showed you who was truly for you. The betrayal became a revelation. The exposure became a boundary. The wound became a warning you will carry for the rest of your life, and it will protect everything God is about to build through you. You do not need to go back. You do not need to explain yourself. You do not need to convince anyone of your worth. The courtroom already issued its verdict, and heaven ruled in your favor. But I need you to understand something before we go any further, because as shocking as it is to discover that human eyes have been watching you with envy, with curiosity, with hidden motives, that is still not the most startling part of this story. Because not every eye on your life has belonged to a human being. There is something that happens in the spirit world that nobody talks about in church on Sunday morning. When a life accumulates enough tested obedience, enough broken nights, enough unanswered prayers endured without quitting, enough forgiveness extended to people who never apologized, that life begins to emit something, a frequency, a signal, a weight that the spiritual realm cannot ignore. And beloved, your life has been doing that for decades. I need you to understand this clearly. You were not drawn into spiritual attention because you were perfect. Not because you were louder than anyone else, or more impressive, or more theologically polished. You were drawn into spiritual attention because you stayed. Because when every reasonable person would have walked away from God, you didn't. Because when faith made no logical sense, you chose it anyway. That kind of obedience creates consequences in the spirit. It doesn't just bless your household. It moves things in dimensions you've never seen with your natural eyes. Heaven doesn't post sentries over empty territory. Think about that. Watchtowers are built over things of value. Gates are stationed at entrances that matter. Sentries are deployed where the enemy has interest. And if your life has felt like a battlefield, if the warfare has been relentless, personal, surgical, then I need you to stop calling yourself forgotten and start asking a different question entirely. Why would darkness work this hard on someone who doesn't matter? The world has been lying to you about what aging means. The world talks about decline. It talks about relevance fading, strength going, time running out. But Scripture tells a completely different story, because in the Bible, the most dangerous voices weren't the youngest ones in the room. Anna, the prophetess, was 84 years old. 84 when she walked into the temple and recognized the Messiah before the priests did. Not the young scholars, not the men with credentials. Anna, a widow who had spent decades in prayer and fasting when no one was watching. Luke 2:37 says she never left the temple. She was there, staying, watching, enduring. And because she had been faithful in the hidden place for so long, God gave her eyes to see what an entire generation missed. Caleb was 85 when he stood before Joshua and said, not whispered, said, "Give me this mountain." Joshua 14:12. 85 years old and still pressing forward, still claiming territory, still refusing to accept that his assignment was finished. And Moses. Moses was 80 when God showed up in the fire and commissioned him to shake the most powerful empire on earth. The burning bush didn't appear to a 20-year-old with energy and ambition. It appeared to an old man who had spent 40 years in the wilderness learning to be still enough to hear God's voice above the noise. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Late life clarity is not a consolation prize. It is a weapon. Seasoned authority is not what's left after your strength is gone. It is what arrives after your pride has been burned away. The tested voice, the one that has cried and questioned and still kept coming back to the altar. That voice carries weight that a comfortable voice never will. Now, let me ask you something that's going to cut straight through to the bone. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt something was wrong and you couldn't explain it? Have you ever been sitting quietly, not thinking about anything spiritual, and suddenly felt a crushing burden to pray for someone and found out later that they were in crisis at that exact moment? Have you ever been in the presence of a certain person and felt something in your chest pull back, go quiet, go on alert, and you told yourself you were being ridiculous? You weren't being ridiculous. What you called nervousness was sometimes a warning. What you called anxiety was sometimes a spiritual alarm. What you called heaviness was sometimes discernment mature, God-sharpened, battle-tested discernment that your spirit developed through 40, 50, 60 years of walking close to God in the dark. Hebrews 5:14 says that mature believers have their senses trained by constant use to distinguish good from evil. Trained. That's not a gift that falls from the sky. That is built through pain, built through betrayal, built through seasons of pressing into God when pressing into anything else would have been easier. And here is where it becomes urgent. Here is where this stops being a spiritual concept and becomes your actual life. That discernment you've been dismissing, minimizing, apologizing for is not a side effect of getting older. It is the result of a life that heaven has been sharpening like a blade. Every trial was a grinding stone. Every loss was a refining fire. Every silent season was a calibration. And the instrument that has been produced through all of that suffering is you standing right now, carrying perception that most people will never develop in a lifetime. But here is the thing that should sober every single one of us. You have been watched because your life carries consequences in the spirit. What you pray moves things. What you speak over your children lands in a realm you cannot see. When you walk into a room, atmospheres shift not because of anything you're trying to do, but because of what has been forged inside you through years of faithfulness that nobody applauded. That is not small. That is not ordinary. That is not something to carry quietly anymore. If you know deep in your chest, in the place past words, that God has sharpened your discernment through pain, type right now, "My spirit has learned to see." Let heaven see you own it, because here is what we have to face next. Discernment is useless if you keep dismissing what God has been showing you. And for too long, chosen one, you have been doing exactly that. Let me stop being gentle with you for a minute. Because everything you've heard in this message, every revelation, every layer pulled back, every truth that made your spirit say yes, none of it matters if you walk out of this moment and go right back to what you've always done. Over-explaining yourself to people who never asked for an explanation. Ignoring warning signs because you didn't want to seem judgmental. Opening the door again and again to the same person who has left it in splinters 3 times already. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Here is the hard truth nobody in your life has had the courage to say to you. What you have been calling overthinking, God calls discernment. What you have been calling paranoia, heaven calls perception. What you have been calling being too sensitive, the Bible calls the gift of the Spirit. 1 Corinthians 12:10 names it plainly. Discerning of spirits. Not a flaw, a gift. One of the rarest gifts the Holy Spirit distributes. And for decades the enemy has convinced you to apologize for it, to suppress it, to diagnose it as anxiety, and take it to a therapist instead of taking it to the throne. That ends right here. You are a watchman on the wall. Ezekiel 33:6 is not a suggestion, it is a warning. If the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, the blood is on his own hands. You were placed on that wall for a reason. The moment you abandon your post because somebody called you paranoid, you leave the gate wide open. So let me ask you something that is going to cut. How many times have you felt something was wrong in your chest, in your gut, in that place where the Holy Spirit speaks before your mind catches up and then talked yourself out of it? How many times did you say, "I'm probably just tired. I'm probably just being dramatic"? How many times did the thing you ignored come back 6 months later and prove your spirit right? Every single time, didn't it? That was not overthinking. That was God trying to protect you. And you hushed him. Now hear me on this. Because this is not about becoming suspicious of everyone around you. This is about becoming a gatekeeper of your own life. You are carrying something too sacred to leave the door unguarded. You cannot afford to keep inviting everyone to the table just because saying no makes you feel unkind. Kindness and discernment are not enemies, they are partners. Discernment is not cruelty. Boundaries are not bitterness. And distance sometimes is not rejection. Sometimes distance is obedience. Now that you know many eyes have been watching your life, you cannot keep living casually. You cannot keep treating your peace like it is a spare room anyone can walk into, uninvited. Your peace is not a waiting room. It is a sanctuary, and sanctuaries have doors. So, I am going to give you a practical list, and I want you to sit with every single one of these, because somebody's face is going to appear in your mind, and I need you to be honest about what you see. Watch for the person who shifts the moment you mention what God has promised over your life. 1 second they're warm. The next second, something changes in their eyes. That shift is not coincidence. That is a spirit responding to your anointing. Watch for the one who only draws near when you are broken. When you are thriving, they are absent. When you are bleeding, suddenly they are present, concerned, invested. That is not love. That is a spiritual parasite feeding on your vulnerability. Watch for the one who celebrates your pain, but grows cold when you find your peace. They were comfortable with you in the valley. Your mountaintop makes them uncomfortable. Why? Because your elevation exposes their stagnation. Watch for the one who always needs you small to feel significant. Every time you grow, something in them needs to remind you of your failures. Every time God opens a door for you, they find a reason why it won't work. That is not concern. That is assignment. Proverbs 4:23 does not whisper this. It declares it. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Not consider guarding, not try to guard when convenient. Guard, present tense, active, continuous, like a soldier who does not clock out. Your anointing is oil, beloved, and oil left uncapped does not stay fresh, it gets contaminated. Every unguarded relationship, every repeated access given to someone who dishonors your peace, every moment you confused guilt with compassion, that is another crack in the cap. And what God has poured into you is too precious, too rare, too hard, one to be drained by people He never authorized to draw from your well. Not everyone watching your life deserves access to your life. Read that again. Let it land somewhere deep. Not everyone watching you deserves access to you. Some people have been watching you from the crowd this whole time, studying your patterns, memorizing your soft spots, waiting for the right moment, and they have never been assigned to your journey. They were assigned to your distraction. The moment you start honoring what God has shown you in your gut, in your spirit, in the quiet warnings that came at 3 a.m., is the moment everything around you begins to realign. The right people recognize a gatekeeper. The wrong people reveal themselves when access is denied. So right now, in the comment section, I want you to make a declaration that heaven can hear and hell cannot ignore. Type, I will honor what God has shown me, not what people told you, not what feels polite, what God showed you. Because God has not only revealed who you must guard against, He has also been preparing something far greater, the reason this much attention has been on your life in the first place. And when I show you what that is, everything you have survived will finally make sense. Let me tell you something they never put on a greeting card, something nobody says at the retirement party, something the world has been lying to you about for decades. You were not watched because you were weak. You were watched because you were carrying something, and everything, every loss, every silence, every door that closed in your face, every night you cried yourself to sleep in a house that used to be full of voices. None of it was punishment. None of it was God forgetting your address. It was training. Think about that word, training. Not trial, not torture, training. The kind that breaks you down in secret so you can be deployed in public. You want to know what you've been carrying all these years. You've been carrying authority born from grief. That's a weight most people in this country have never touched. When you've buried a spouse, when you've sat in a hospital room watching someone you love slip away while you held their hand and still managed to whisper, "God, I trust you." That's not weakness. That is spiritual muscle nobody can buy and nobody can fake. You've been carrying compassion, born from suffering. 40, 50, 60 years of watching people, praying for strangers, absorbing pain that wasn't even yours that built something inside you. A depth, a tenderness with teeth, a kind of love that doesn't flinch when things get ugly. You've been carrying stability born from long obedience. You stayed married when it was hard. You kept going to church when it was dry. You kept praying when heaven felt like a wall of silence. Do you understand what that produces? It produces a human being who does not move when the storm hits. And right now, this country is desperate for people who do not move. And you've been carrying wisdom born from decades of fire. Not book wisdom, not classroom wisdom. The kind of wisdom that only comes from walking through something that nearly destroyed you and choosing to get back up anyway. Proverbs 16:31 says it plainly. A grey head is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life. A crown, not a consolation prize, not a symbol of irrelevance. A crown. Now hear me. The younger generation, and I say this with love, they have speed, they have energy, they have fire in their belly and a phone in their hand, and they move fast. But speed without gravity is just noise. You have gravity. You walk into a room and something settles. You open your mouth and people stop. Not because you're loud, but because your words carry the weight of a life that has been tested. That is rare. That is irreplaceable. And that is exactly what a broken America needs from you right now. Because this country is hemorrhaging hope. Families are fracturing. Young people are drowning in anxiety and calling it ambition. Grandchildren are scrolling at 2 a.m., searching for something to hold on to. Lonely people are sitting 5 feet away from someone they love and feeling completely unknown. And you who have survived widowhood, loss, debt, caregiving, abandonment, illness, estrangement, and silence. You are not a bystander to this crisis. You are the answer to it. Isaiah 46:4 says, "Even to your old age I am he, and to grey hairs I will carry you. I have made, and I will bear. I will carry, and will save." God is not done carrying you, but more than that, he's been building you into someone capable of carrying others. Your voice matters now more than it ever has. In your family, there are wounds only your voice can reach. In your church, there is a generation of spiritually exhausted people who need to hear from someone who has been to the bottom and come back with evidence that God is faithful. In this country, there are lonely, tired, disoriented souls who are one conversation away from finding their footing if only someone with real authority would speak. That someone is you, not in spite of your years, because of them, not despite the weight you've carried, because you became weight-bearing. Heaven let your life be watched, because heaven intends for your life to matter. Say it right now, out loud, wherever you are sitting. Say it like you mean it, because every word is true. My years were not wasted. They trained me. Say it again. Let it sink below the surface of your mind and settle into the floor of your spirit where doubt has been living rent-free for far too long. Your years trained you. Every single one. And if your years trained you, if this weight you've been carrying was never meant to bury you but to qualify you, then there is one thing that can no longer be permitted. Your mouth cannot stay silent, because the watchers have seen everything you've been through. And what heaven has been watching, what has been recorded, documented, witnessed, is about to be used. The question is no longer whether you were prepared. The question is whether you are ready to step into what the preparation was for. Now I need you to hear what I'm about to say, like your life depends on it. Because it does. The enemy never came after your money first. He never came after your health first. He came after something far more dangerous. He came after your voice. Think about it. What is the one thing God used to create the entire universe? Not his hands, not a tool, his voice. He spoke light into darkness. He declared land out of water. He said, and it was so. And you who carry his image, his breath, his spirit, you have been walking through this world with your mouth sealed shut, apologizing for having opinions, swallowing prayers you should have shouted, holding testimonies in your chest like prisoners. That was not humility. That was a heist. The enemy stole your voice, one disappointment at a time, one dismissal at a time, one you don't matter anymore at a time. And somewhere along the decades, you stopped speaking and started just surviving. Surviving is over. Right now, tonight. Listen to what God said to the prophet Ezekiel. He didn't hand him a strategy. He didn't hand him a plan. He took him to a valley of dry bones, bones that had been dead so long they'd gone bleached in the sun. And he said one thing, prophesy to these bones. Speak to what looks finished. Speak to what looks irreversible. Speak to what the world already wrote off. And when Ezekiel opened his mouth, beloved, the bones rattled, the bones moved. An entire army rose from the dead because one man dared to speak. That is the power sitting dormant in your throat right now. Moses stood before the most powerful ruler on earth. He was 80 years old. He had a stammer. He had a criminal record. He had doubt running through his blood like a river. And God said in Exodus 4:12, I will be with your mouth, not I will fix your mouth, not I will replace your mouth. I will be with it. God doesn't need your eloquence. He needs your obedience. And Caleb, 85 years old, standing on the edge of his inheritance, and instead of asking for a quiet valley somewhere to retire, he looked God square in the face and said 4 words that shook history. Give me this mountain. Not a memory, not a monument, a mountain. That is the spirit I am calling up out of you right now. Because here is what I know about you, and I know this not because I can see your face, but because I have walked with God long enough to recognize what his silence produces in people. You have endured things that should have destroyed you. You have held your peace in rooms that didn't deserve it. You have prayed in secret over people who publicly humiliated you. You have blessed what cursed you. You have quietly, faithfully, stubbornly refused to quit. And heaven took notes on every single word you didn't say. But that season is finished now, because the same eyes that watched your suffering, they are about to witness your voice. This is not about a microphone. This is not about a platform. Nobody is asking you to start a podcast or stand behind a pulpit. This is about something far more sacred and far more powerful than fame. This is about you walking back into your own kitchen and speaking blessing over every corner of that house. This is about you laying your hands on your grandchildren's heads and declaring futures over them that hell cannot touch. This is about you sitting across from your son or daughter who is drowning in confusion, and instead of staying quiet to keep the peace, you open your mouth and you speak truth. This is about you walking into a room full of fear and becoming the voice that remembers who God is. Your silence was survival. Your voice is authority. And there is a difference between the two that the spiritual realm recognizes immediately. You have been living muted in a world that is dying for someone to speak with weight. So right now, right where you are sitting, I need you to make a decision. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Not after one more prayer, one more confirmation, one more sign. Right now, if you are done living muted, if you are done swallowing what God told you to declare, type this in the comments. I still have something to say. Say it, seal it, let heaven record it. Because chosen one, now that you know who has been watching you, the angels, the adversary, the broken people assigned to your life, and God himself, there is only one question left. How will you live from this day forward? Beloved, we have come a long way together tonight. And before I release you, I need you to stay with me for just these final moments. Because everything we have walked through, every layer of revelation, every truth that cut you, every word that made you catch your breath, it was all building to this. Right here, right now. So don't move. Don't you dare click away. Let me remind you what heaven has been doing while the world looked the other way. Heaven saw you. In that kitchen, in that hospital room. At that graveside when the preacher finished and everyone else went home, and you were still standing there talking to God with nothing left but a broken whisper. Heaven saw every single moment. Not one tear missed the record. Not one prayer evaporated into empty air. Every silent act of faithfulness you performed, when no applause was coming, it was witnessed, documented, honored. And then people noticed something on you. They couldn't name it. They couldn't explain it. But they felt it. Some were drawn close. Some ran. Some circled your life for years, half magnetized, half terrified, because the light you carried exposed what they were hiding inside themselves. Then came the betrayal. And God allowed it. Not to destroy you, but to reveal who was actually for you. He used their gossip to clear the room. He used their envy to protect your purpose. He used their whispers to sharpen your discernment into something sharp enough to cut through darkness. And those years, those long, silent, overlooked years were not wasted. They were weight training. Every decade you endured what should have broken you. God was building muscle in your spirit that no younger person in your life has yet developed. You didn't lose time. You were being forged. And your voice, listen to me, your voice still matters. Maybe more now than it ever has. So here is your commission. Not a suggestion, a charge. Live guarded, not fearful. There is a difference. Fear says, hide. Guarded says, discern who earns access. You do not owe your presence to every person who demands it. Live visible, not self-erasing. Stop apologizing for the space you occupy. Stop dimming yourself in rooms where your light is the only light. Proverbs 4:18 says, "The path of the righteous shines brighter and brighter until full day." You are not fading. You are building toward noon. Live discerning, not suspicious. Your spiritual senses have been sharpened over decades of survival. Trust them. What your spirit flags in a conversation, in a relationship, in a room that is not paranoia. That is decades of God-forged wisdom speaking. Live vocal, not muted. That testimony in your chest, the one you keep thinking is too old, too ordinary, too small to matter. Someone within earshot of your voice is one sentence away from choosing to live instead of quit. Your story is not finished. It is a weapon. Live like a witness-bearing elder in the kingdom of God, because that is exactly what you are. And hear this, hear it deep. You are not just being watched. You are being entrusted. God does not surveil people he has discarded. He watches closely the ones he is about to deploy. And after everything you have survived, the losses, the silence, the betrayals, the unanswered prayers, the years when your faith hung by a single thread after all of it, he is still looking at you and saying, "This one, this is the one I trust." Your children may not fully understand yet what you carried for this family. The culture has already moved on, scrolling past your generation like a footnote. But heaven knows exactly what kind of vessel you became in the fire. Heaven read every page of your story, and heaven is not disappointed. The next chapter of your life will not be defined by who misunderstood you. It will be defined by what God built in you while they were talking. Let that land, let it settle, let it break, whatever is left of the lie that your season is over. Because here is the greatest shock of this entire message, greater than discovering who was watching, greater than the betrayal, greater than the spiritual warfare that targeted you for decades. The greatest shock is not that many eyes were watching you. The greatest shock is that God was preparing you through every one of those watching eyes, through every wound, through every wilderness, to stop hiding, and to become a visible vessel of His glory in your later years. This is your coronation, beloved, not your conclusion. Now, right where you are sitting, place your hand on your chest. Feel that heartbeat. That is not an accident. That is an assignment still in motion. Type right now in the comments, I am seen, I am guarded, and I am still chosen. Say it, seal it. Let heaven record your declaration. And tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight, pray out loud, not in a whisper, out loud. Let the walls of your home hear a chosen one step back into their authority. And if this message reached something real inside you, stay close. Every week, there is a new word prepared for believers exactly like you. Seasoned, tested, still standing, still chosen. You are not forgotten, beloved. You never were. Now go live like heaven is watching, because it always has been.